I'm joined by Brian, and we're going to talk through a brand new course that we're releasing on Enterprise DNA's Learning Center, which is included in our platform access for members and for those with Center of Excellence licenses. I actually created the course, so Brian's going to be the one asking the questions here, and we're going to dive into a few things around it and why we created the course and the benefits that you can get out of it, and just talk through some of the content and included in it. So, Brian, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, Sam, thanks. And before we dive into the course itself, I did want to talk to you about kind of your experience with corporate clients. I know you spend a lot of your time working with our corporate clients, and wanted to see kind of what you've observed in terms of, from a deployment and governance standpoint, about what makes for a successful deployment versus patterns you've seen that lead to problems.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, and a big reason why I wanted to create a course on deployment is I wanted to try and simplify it down. And that was a big thing that I've seen over time, especially as Power BI has evolved. Organizations have had to evolve as well. But I definitely feel like it's been overcomplicated in so many different ways. And so what I wanted to do was create some content that provided a simpler framework around how you can deploy Power BI over an extended period of time to really change your data culture. So that was like my biggest thought process behind creating a lot of the content, was simplify it down around how any organization from small, medium to large can deploy Power BI. I also included a lot of flexibility in how you actually implement Power BI. I provide a framework, but I didn't actually stipulate, this is exactly what you should do, because everyone is dealing with a different environment. They're dealing with different resources. So it's really just providing an overarching framework, a simpler framework that you can approach how you deploy Power BI from the very initial stages to maybe in a year or two's time, where you're trying to continue to optimize your data culture. So really what I have identified over time is that you need to break it down into 3 different parts, and that is how the course is structured. So you have strategy, you have a planning phase, and then you have a governance phase. And then in and amongst those three pillars, if you like, is a range of different things and considerations and techniques that you need to have a think about and plan for. So hopefully that gives you a reasonable amount of guidance around my thought process here, but definitely simplification. It's always been a big thing for me in terms of like Power BI development, but also in Power BI deployment. You just don't need to overcomplicate things with Power BI. You can actually get things going pretty quickly, and things should compound and flow from there. There's a technique which a concept I talk about in the course of the analytics flywheel. And this is a sort of concept that I've sort of come up with in my mind. I've stolen the idea from others and just repackaged it for Enterprise DNA. But I feel like if you can get this analytics flywheel going, the momentum will continue to push this movement. We'll be able to push the initiative and push the movement. Really embedded inside the culture within your organization, and that's a big part of it as well.
One of the things I've heard you say is that after the decision to use Power BI, the decisions you make about deployment and governance are the most important factors. And I'm wondering, you hit on one of the terms there, which is planning. And it seems to me from talking to you and, kind of one of the messages of the course is that explicit planning and consideration of these factors up front is key. That you can kind of, in using Power BI, you can kind of fall into this and kind of find yourself, making decisions in an ad hoc way. Mm-hmm. And then you're pretty far down the road, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. And I'm wondering if, you can talk a little bit toward the planning aspect of it and kind of the importance of doing these things and considering these decisions up front?
It's really interesting. My thinking on this has actually evolved over time. Initially, when I saw Power BI, it really puts the power in the hands of your everyday user. And so you think, well, if you can distribute the Power BI as a tool out to the business and just let them have it, you're going to get a lot of great insights, and you're going to just organically build a data culture off the back of that. The reality over time that I have seen and believe now is that, yes, you've got to actually have a bit of planning in how you implement it, particularly around how you distribute your insights through the Power BI online service. So you've got to have a lot of organization around your workspaces and a lot of the administrative ways that you govern the online service. Things like security, refresh times, data pipelines management. So you really do have to have a little bit of, like, quite a lot of, well, not quite a lot, but just some simple planning around how you actually want to operate these side of things. And so a lot of that is covered. All of the considerations, like almost like a checklist, is covered
right.
In the particular course around that aspect. And the other big aspect that sort of just comes to top of mind right now is just standards around your Power BI development as well. So how your analysts actually create your reports. And this is super important for auditing results, but also just continuity between how the entire business deploys Power BI over time. Definitely my thinking has evolved from actually witnessing the described self-service aspect of Power BI. Like, if you literally just let everyone just go at it and go do their own thing, you quickly get into this siloed environment where everyone's off creating reports that look completely different. There's no cohesiveness around how users are accessing data, how they're designing reports, how they're building data models. There's no collaboration over building optimized data pipelines that flow into your models through different workspaces. So very quickly you can get a lot of duplication of effort, a lot of incorrect data points. So you just got to have a bit more of a plan around that. Now, it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. It doesn't need to be something that you plan for 6 months. It can actually be quite simple, and that is that is at its core what I'm trying to achieve with this particular course, or the content within this course, is just showcasing, these are the key things you need to think about. Make sure strategically you're thinking about them, getting the right people in the room, getting all the key stakeholders involved in those strategic discussions, and then having a simple plan to actually roll out and iterate on your deployment as you go.
Yeah, and I've seen that. I've seen that as well in my experiences, that if you don't have this foundation in place, you get just people spinning off in a lot of different directions. As you say, duplicating effort. But within kind of a well-structured framework, I think there's still a lot of freedom you can give people, and you can really operationalize that self-service, but in a way that makes sense and doesn't duplicate effort and still maintains that common look and feel.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think self-service is undoubtedly still real. Like, it is still absolutely essential particularly to get the buy-in from the rest of the business that this is how you can really embed that like that data culture within your organization. So empowering the analysts and empowering the end users is still key, but I just don't think you absolutely just can't let everyone just go off and do it without even thinking, without thinking or having some sort of framework around how you're actually doing it. So that is really the key point here. The key insight is that if you can just embed a framework around what is described in this course, I think you're just going to set yourself up for success a whole lot better than if you don't.
Yeah, and I love that checklist approach where you just go through and you make sure that you're at least explicitly addressing all the key boxes. So I'm wondering now if we can dive in and take a look at the course outline, and you can kind of talk through a little bit more in detail, kind of how you see people going through the course and kind of making the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the key things that I I actually go into, right from the start, is that this is not going to be your average course on deployment planning, strategy, and governance. It's not some detailed administrative course where you're going to get every single step from 1 to 50 all laid out for you, and that's exactly how you want to do it. A lot of the ideas and concepts here come from my own practical background of just, if you create some action within your deployment, if you actually are proactive in actually getting things done, you're going to have a lot more success than if you sit back and try and plan things for the next year. It's just not required. I look at Power BI as a far more sort of flexible and nimble tool, that if you just get things going, then that flywheel is going to take you further and further, and then in no time at all, you're going to be seeing some really comprehensive gains in what you're doing with Power BI. But as I mentioned earlier, I'd like to keep things simple. And so, that is what is embedded into this course, where I break it down into these 3 parts, where we talk about strategy, like the strategic way you need to think about Power BI now, because Power BI really has created what I see as an inflection point with what you can do with data, from data management to data analysis to data distribution. It's really like changed the game for all organizations out there. And so, to me, you need to actually think about things differently, because the possibilities are so you're working in a new realm, basically, of what can be done. So strategically, you just need to think a little bit differently, and so that's what we go over first. Then we get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty around planning. So just the checklist approach of like the things that you need to think about, and maybe even start organizing, from a resourcing point of view, from a standards point of view, from a data architecture point of view, just making sure that you're at least checking off all of these things, and that you're aware of these are the things that are going to impact your overall deployment. And then lastly is, once you start getting into Power BI and you've created that action, and you're actually like building momentum internally, you've got users who are building out some initial reports, you are getting your key stakeholders involved in consumption of that information and making decisions off that information. So how do you then govern that longer term, so that you're continuing this flywheel approach, and you're continuing to see the benefits and compounding effects of your efforts with Power BI? And so there's a few things that you need to do from a governance perspective. Some of those are features that you need to take advantage of, but also some of these are making sure that you're strategically implementing Power BI for success long term. So yeah, that's basically it. It's not an incredibly detailed course going into every unique like every feature that Power BI has at your disposal. It covers all of the really important ones, but gives you a master framework for how to make sure your deployment is as successful as possible.
So, Sam, I wanted to ask you a question about audience for this. That obviously, kind of the champions and the administrators, for Power BI in an organization are going to want to, go through this in detail. But I'm wondering, kind of people more at the operational development level, do you see them as an audience for this as well? And kind of how do you see them kind of maybe drawing something different and valuable out of this?
Look, I definitely feel that this is a course for anyone who is part of the makeup of your Power BI deployment. Absolutely, it's absolutely essential for your central analytics team, or even your internal center of excellence around analytics. Those are going to be the key ones driving at least a lot of the strategic organization and discussions initially, and some of the planning. This is actually one of the recommendations that I make from a strategic perspective, is that you actually want to set up a central center of excellence. So if you don't actually have one, you want you rather, regardless of how big or small your organization is, you want to have a group leading your deployment, and preferably bringing individuals in from all parts of the organization into that center of excellence. Yes, it could be maybe from a high level led by IT personnel or analytics personnel, but you do want to create a center of excellence that involves individuals from all different business functions or divisions, so that everyone is on the same page. So yeah, I wouldn't limit it to any subset, but I think it's an absolute must for particularly those who are in that central governing body around how you're going to deploy Power BI throughout your organization.
Great. Well, I just wanted to say thanks for developing this, because this has been one that I know has been probably one of our most requested courses. I know there's a lot of people eager to hear your thoughts on this. So I wondered just if you had anything more that you wanted to add to our discussion today, or anything more you wanted to highlight to the folks who are going to be taking a look at this course in the next few days.
Yeah, it's really just a reiterating what I mentioned earlier, is that I feel like this course is quite unique. Like it's not your everyday deployment course. It's really just simplifying everything down into a solid framework that any organization can utilize to deploy Power BI successfully. And I haven't, I've tried to keep it as interesting and as interesting as possible, really just focusing in on what I think are the key things that are going to create that compounding effect, that flywheel effect within your organization around Power BI. The most important thing to me is that everyone recognizes this paradigm shift that we're all witnessing right now with tools like Power BI, and giving you that framework to make sure that you take advantage of it. It's not all just about like one feature versus another. It's just about thinking high level and being like, wow, we can actually transform how our organization deals with data, manages data, visualizes data, and almost at the same time inspiring you around how you can actually do this. And it's actually not that complicated. It's nothing like IT implementations of old, where you take 2 years to decide if you actually want to do it, and then 2 years to actually implement it. It's kind of like, if you actually follow this framework, you can be going in a month's time and already be making a difference, already kickstarting your implementation. And then from there, it only just gets better. You can have such a huge impact in how your organization operates, in its entirety, basically. That's what absolutely I want to make everyone aware of and really showcase with this particular course.
And I think you hit on something really key before, which is the iterative nature of deployment and governance, particularly governance, that there's never going to be a one-size-fits-all framework or solution, but this provides that really strong initial foundation. And then just for each organization, as you go through the implementation, you're gonna refine that and kind of modify it as circumstances apply. And so it'll improve over time. I've seen that in our organization as well, that even as the feature set in Power BI changes, you've got to update your governance approach.
Yeah. Now, look, one of the other things that I've seen is that there are a lot of organizations out there who spend tens of thousands of dollars on planning out their Power BI deployment. And, I don't want to stop anyone from actually doing that if they feel like that is necessary. But I feel like within this course, everything that you need to know around a framework for deploying Power BI is covered in some way. And then it's up to the organizations or the individuals within who are leading this within organizations to really pick out which is relevant, which is completely relevant to your own internal deployment, to say your division or your entire organization, and then basically acting on it, moving quickly on making it a reality. I'm pretty big on this, like this penchant for action. Just actually getting things done with Power BI. We've seen with Power BI that they've internally got a new model where they've just continued to evolve the product as they have seen new requirements or had different requests. To me, the Power BI deployment can be done in a similar way. It doesn't need to, it doesn't need to be on this huge time cycle where, it just takes so long to plan things out, so long to implement things. Like, you can actually just act and start doing things today, which are going to just continue to compound over time and make a big difference. And I think we all need to try and get into that mentality. And hopefully with the framework provided, we can create that action in lots of organizations. So that's my hope.
That's great. I think that's a great note to end on, and can round off here.
Cool.
Again,
okay.
Thanks, Sam, and look forward to hearing everybody's feedback.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for your great questions, and look forward to putting it out there and getting everyone's feedback. And hopefully this is the start of much more content like this in the future.
Great.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everybody.